Good morning and welcome to the Nevada Room and the latest edition of Did You Know? This time we're going to be talking the 2023 legislative session with Washoe County Sheriff Darren Balaam. I'm PIO Brian Samudio. Sheriff, good morning. We're a little early today.
We're a little early. We got a lot going on. We have some retirements and some promotions today, so we kind of had to modify. So thank you for joining us at this early time and not later on this afternoon.
At Washoe Sheriff on social media, so hit that like button. You're going to get it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of our social media, also on YouTube is where we're streaming. And our YouTube channel has a lot of great content. You're going to get a ton of great content across all of those social media platforms. Sheriff, the legislative session, while I was in journalism, I got to cover this. It's like a thunderstorm runs into a tornado amidst a hurricane in a traffic jam. It's nuts watching people walk through the hallways. It's 120 days plus sometimes of pure hectic action down there. More than 1,000 bills, about 100 related to law enforcement.
Yeah, that's one thing throughout every legislative session. It affects us all.
Yes.
No matter what profession you're in, the bills come and they come fast. Sometimes they'll slow, but then they pick up, and by the end, everybody down there is running at a sprint, if not faster. And then we let the dust settle, and then we figure out what laws change. How do we modify that? Whether it's building, roads, water, law enforcement, healthcare, it doesn't matter. Those bills are all there. They affect our state, and then we move forward.
You have a team in Carson City at every single legislative session. Let's introduce you to a couple of the all-stars that were down there grinding through this and just absolutely just starring for us. On the end, we've got Sergeant Jason Walker, who honestly is one of the best guys in the building, and one of the smartest people that we have is Mary Sarah Kenner, our government liaison, who's wearing an outstanding pink today. I did compliment you earlier on the pink. That is a rocky color. Sheriff, just what do you say to these folks who dedicate so much time over so many months in Carson City?
There's nothing you can say. We say thank you, but really what people don't realize is, like you mentioned, the sheriff's office had somebody down there for years, but it was part-time, and it was usually a Sergeant Walker, Lieutenant Captain. But then we were fortunate enough 4 years ago, we brought in Mary Sarah full-time. So although this is 120 days, now Sergeant Walker has to go back to his full-time job, so overseeing our fleet, overseeing backgrounds, overseeing and helping with training and everything else. But they watch and monitor with Mary Sarah all the now legislative bodies, the councils, the commission, and there's many committees that during that other year and a half time period that they have to go down, they go to meetings, they look at, okay, what are the next bills or what are our issues now? And so, it is 120 days of craziness, but then the other year and a half, they have their hands full with just monitoring everything else and then looking forward to what's going on. So, for us, I'm truly appreciative of everything they do throughout every single year.
Well, let's get to their expertise. There's too many bills to go through. Otherwise, this would be a 7,400-hour episode of Did You Know? And I know nobody wants to go through that. Let's do 4 bills today. Fentanyl is on the mind of a lot of people right now. And it's just something I think a lot of people don't have enough information maybe on. It's scary to see it in the news. SB 35, Sheriff, tell us a little bit about that and how fentanyl is talked about with that.
Well, unfortunately, we knew fentanyl is a problem. We've been talking about it. We've been putting stuff out there. And what I would tell anybody real quick, if you have an issue, please, if you don't know where to go, come into our front doors and ask for help. We have resources. We can get you there. So you don't come in, as I always say, through our back doors with silver breads.
Absolutely.
But with fentanyl, it is killing people. And it has been, it is, and unfortunately, it will continue to be a problem. And so there were many bills. And SB 35, we looked at last session before 2021, they raised the limits to 100 grams. So there were several bills that we're trying to address to bring that back down, because as we know, 100 grams is a lot when it's 1 granule of salt of methamphetamine, fentanyl, that can kill you. And so you guys are down there battling with all 4 bills. So how did we end up with 35? What was the end result from 100 grams? Where's it at now?
So Senate Bill 35 end result establishes low-level trafficking of fentanyl, 28 grams or more, but less than 42 is a Category B felony. Minimum punishment for that's not less than a year, max is not more than 10. Senate Bill 35 also establishes high-level trafficking. Again, trafficking of fentanyl, 42 grams or more, but less than 100 grams, also a felony. Minimum punishment on that is not less than 2 years, max is not more than 15 years. So we were happy to have Senate Bill 35. And again, Sheriff, like you said, there were multiple fentanyl bills out there. That was one of our benchmarks to get that going as our goal down in legislature. And again, bipartisan efforts, and we're happy to get Senate Bill 35 signed in.
You know, and one thing, you know, we didn't do last time, but we tried to give kind of people an idea. I always say the stage 4 baby jars, right, of powder, we had our crime lab do it, that's 100 grams filled. Or about, depending on the pill size, I have another jar I use as an example, it's about 228 to 400 pills was 100 grams. So, you know, we got it down to 28. It was at 5 before a session ago. We wanted to kind of lower, but you know what? We're making progress because this is an epidemic that is here. We would like to defeat it. We are going to work everything to defeat it. But until then, those that are pushing those onto our street, we had to come up with different companies, right? You have to attack the supply, but you also have to provide services for that demand. And I think this helps on the supply side while we build and enhance some of the services for the demand. So we're attacking it from both ends.
Mayor, I see you nodding. You're in all of these. There are testimonials, so you have people that are involved, people who have lost a loved one. Can you put me in that room again?
You know, I think particularly in this bill, it was really a working group with the Attorney General, with the public defenders, with the district attorneys, with other law enforcement agencies in the state, and talking to, you know, the sheriff alluded to it, right? This affects people in our communities. And so we worked with families in this community, right in Reno, who have been affected by this, and how can we get there and tell their story to lawmakers as a way to get down to a lower number, but also hopefully bring some of those families a little bit of peace.
Sheriff, I would imagine you look at this as progress, but how happy are you? Do you think we need to continue down a certain line, or what do you think?
You know what? I think next time we need to address it even more. You know, our thing here at the sheriff's office, that's why we have detention services, and you know they're collaborating with outside services. We need to enhance that demand side in our services for those. We also need to have those penalties for those suppliers that think they can come push those dangerous drug killing illegal drugs on streets. So this is a start. I think next session we should work more towards on both things. You know, we were down there and we talked about it, right? The war on drugs, we focused on the supply, and we have a lot in prison, but we still have a lot of supply coming onto our streets. And then we've kind of refocused on demand, and I think the same thing will happen. I think this way, if we work both sides, that's going to have our greatest impact. And so I'm looking forward to at least we have some stiffer penalties for our drug dealers, but we also are increasing our programs here at the sheriff's office with some other programs that we'll talk about. One of the bills that we've done that is going to help those addicts. And so if they do come into our system, we will get them the services and then hopefully them back out so that they stay out in society. That is our goal.
Right. If you want to read more about that one, it's Senate Bill 35. You can look that up with the Nevada State Legislature. A lot more information there. Let's move over to the Assembly a little bit for a second. AB 156, Assembly Bill 156. This one affects our agency directly because of the jail.
It does. You know, this was one back in 2019 when we came in. It was one of our focuses because opioids at that time, prescription opioids was a problem. It still is a problem. Fentanyl was coming up in that, and now it's even a greater problem. But we wanted to have what's called we call it MAT. It's Medicated Assisted Treatment Program. And so we started working with our medical provider here in the jail, and took us 2 years. It was a lot of work by a lot of people within this organization, but now we are a certified MAT program. And what this bill did was try and take the program we've created here and then take it to other detention facilities within the state and correctional facilities. And it's kind of changed, right? The one thing before I have them described, you know, this MAP program, some may or may not think it works, but we pull our numbers, and in 2022, we had over almost 100 people that went through our program, and less than 50% recidivated within 1 year period. And so it is working. And I think, you know, with this bill, how did it change from everybody having MAP was the initial bill, right? And it's expensive, and thank goodness he has grants. And we had our medical provider, our contracted medical provider for the jail, kind of step up with us. It wasn't in their contract, and they helped us. But what's that bill now look like?
So Assembly Bill 56, it started out as every county in the state requirement for a MAT program. We all know that Washoe County is the second largest county, Clark County being the largest. Some of the smaller counties don't have the funding. They don't have the access to the grants. They don't have the specialized doctors or those caregivers that are out there that can administer a MAT program. And ultimately, through the legislative process, the bill became a study. And the study is going to be at least through the interim. We're going to look at it again for 25. And particularly section 17.5 in Assembly Bill 156 just says we're studying MAT programs. They understand the value of the MAT program. They understand the impact that it can have on preventing that recidivism for those people. And again, Sheriff, like you said, Washoe County's ahead of the game on this bill. Everybody that was down there in conversation with the MAT program wanted to know how you got to what you did. Grant funding. You even told me you spent a lot of money on your own getting those people in those places, getting that training built up. Another thing with the MAT program is just the expense of the prescription, the expense of the drugs that are out there. Some insurance companies aren't paying for that, whether it be Medicaid or not, or some care providers for detention facilities don't offer that in there. So ultimately, again, we're ahead of the game on that. We're the only detention facility in the state that already provides medication-assisted treatment or MAT in our facility. We're looking forward to working with other law enforcement partners across the state on this issue. Once we get it, again, dialed in to where we can maybe offer tours here. People can, look at the playbook. This is what worked for us. This is what didn't work for us. We're going to provide that back to the legislative process, and hopefully they can dial that down to offer it across the state.
And I think this goes back to, Sheriff, kind of what you were talking about in the interim. The leader really on this bill was Assemblywoman Sarah Peters, who's an Assemblywoman from Washoe County, right here in Reno Sparks. And we kind of took our experts down and sat down with her multiple times, ran through our program, but also offered our experts to other legislators and can continue to do that during the interim. Have people come in, talk to us, and then work very closely with the Assemblywoman on how we might move this forward next session.
And the one thing I know, when we talked about prisons, it was kind of cool during the session. We did the first transfer from a detention facility to the prison. It was a female inmate, and she actually volunteered to stay here so she could get into that program. And then again, we helped roll our expertise, like you said, Mary Sarah, to the prison. So last time I checked, she's doing well. But again, they're struggling because it is that's the one thing I can say, and you kind of hit on it, Sergeant Walker, is it was tough. And how we did this was, I can't say enough about all the staff here. Everybody stepped up. The commission, the civilian, our healthcare workers, the state came through with those grants because it is expensive, and trying to get the safes and get the certifications from DEA to store it on. But once we got there, what we're seeing and watching that female, hearing that story, and when you guys went down to tell it, I know we're on the right path.
Assembly Bill 156. If you want to read some more about that, it's always available online. Let's go to catalytic converters, which seems like everybody's talking about this, and just it's comical sometimes. Some of the stories you see about people literally just crawling into a car in the middle of a parking lot and doing this and stealing somebody's catalytic converters. It's not just an issue here in Northern Nevada. This is a nationwide issue, Sheriff.
It is, and over the last year and a half after last session, going into this session, this was one of our goals. I gave the team, I'm like, we need a thing. They reached out, they collaborated with down south with Las Vegas Metro. There was, I think, several stories that kind of really prompted down there. There was a veteran that lost his catalytic converter, and the community stepped forward because it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It then costs anywhere from $1,500 or more, and it disables your vehicle if that's your only transportation to continue to put food on the table, a roof over your head. Now you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And here we had multiple catalytic converters starting or getting stolen. And like as you alluded to, one was in broad daylight at district court in the parking lot
Seriously.
in the middle of the day. And we had employees walking all around, and they were quick. They're in and out. And so like we see when precious metals go up, because people have asked, well, why are they stealing them? Well, inside those catalytic converters is precious metals.
Yes.
And as those metals go up in price, they are going to go out and take those, like when copper goes up, we see copper thefts go up. And so the team did a great job collaborating, working with legislators, finding a way to make it, because the problem is if somebody stole a catalytic converter and no one should be in possession unless you're a mechanic or you're a scrapper to have a catalytic converter, right? But there was nothing. We found somebody with 4 or 5, even one sitting in the back of the car that we obviously could tell was cut off to charge them with it, right? It was hard to prove. We started a program with one of our detectives a year and a half ago And last time I checked at the beginning of this year, over the year, we've done well over several thousand. And not one of those that we were spray painting the VIN number on the catalytic so we could at least track it if they had a report had been stolen. But we have to do more, and that's what this bill was, is we have to target those that are in and out within less than a minute. And you talk to some of our victims, as the team did, to bring them down there to the legislatures. Not only is it $1,500, but some were even putting cages, and they were still cutting them off.
Right.
And there were certain vehicles that were, because they had more precious metal in them, they were targeting and victims that were multiple victims. So not just once, twice, maybe even 3 times they'd had that stolen. So it was really hitting them. And so what did we end up with? I think it was pretty good.
So Senate Bill, everything that you said is accurate. Senate Bill 243 started with Senator Rochelle Wynn, and it was even prior to the regular legislative session. Several stakeholders, including our partners in Las Vegas Metro, all met here in town, and she, along with Vegas Metro and the others in the coalition for the state, decided that not only is this a state issue, it's the entire West Coast issue. And we, again, took that as one of our benchmarks. Let's really put something into this. Ultimately, what Senate Bill 243 ended up with, it establishes the theft of a catalytic converter. Prior to, they were looking at catalytic converters as scrap metal. Now it's the theft of a catalytic converter. So unless the person, again, Sheriff, you alluded to this, automobile wrecker, a scrap processor, or a few other exclusions, if somebody has the illegal possession of one used converter or more, it's now a felony. That has some pretty severe legal teeth. Before it did, it was more like just a misdemeanor, almost like a lower level citation. We know with the theft of that catalytic converter, yeah, the part might be $1,500, but it takes you a month to get it into the shop, another $1,000 for the repair. For somebody that's on a fixed income, that's a total of $3,000. I mean, that's just expensive. So for the legal possession of what's now a felony, person can be sent to prison for a year, not more than 4 or 5, depending on how many used catalytic converters someone has in their possession. We were happy to get that on. That was a bill that, although we did have several discussions, it wasn't that hard of a sale. Everybody understood it was a state problem, and we put the bipartisan effort in it, and we got it signed. We're happy to have that happen.
Mary Sarah, when you see something like that so many people can get behind as a group, how much easier is it to get something done? I mean, bipartisan's a great word.
Absolutely, and I think this was another example
Yeah.
of the bipartisanship, Sergeant Walker alluded to. We met before session on this, we met during session, all kinds of conversations, but it was really people from all walks of life, both sides of the aisle, coming together and saying, hey, this affects everybody,
Yeah.
so let's just get it done and move on. I mean, the governor even signed the bill before session was over, so that was a sign of a good thing, I think.
Good stuff. That's Senate Bill 243. If you want to be a part of this catalytic converter program we have here at the Sheriff's Office, WashoSheriff.com. And I'm going to give her credit. That's former detective, now Patrol Sergeant Sonia Butler, who is one of our all-stars here
Yes.
at the Sheriff's Office. She's been behind that one. Lastly, certainly not least, we want to get into Assembly Bill 51 regarding domestic violence cases.
This is when we've had some tragedy, not only here in our home community, but around the nation here recently on domestic violence. And it's one we've been battling for my entire career and even before. There's been a focus, and we will continue to focus on this. And again, before we talk about the bill, I want to say if there's someone out there and you're in a situation, again, know that we are here. You don't have to come in our doors for that, because that may be a fear that you're being watched or whatever. If you reach out to us, non-emergency, or however, we have victim advocates, we have detectives, we have the resources. So please reach out if you need help. We are here and we will get you out of that situation. And so with this, again, this is one of those, I think, that we talk about. It's not partisan. It affects everybody. I think we all knew on this, and this is something that we continually know. It's one of the crimes that ultimately, unfortunately, there's a high percentage that leads to death. And that's what we saw here recently in our community, and we have to put it into it. And so, again, the team collaborated with the entire, and what do we end up with? I think it's good.
So this one's very good, and the conversations for Assembly Bill 51 started, I believe, on day 2.
Absolutely.
We were across the street in the Attorney General's office using the upstairs conference room, and there was the Attorney General, there was the Majority Leader, there was the ACLU, there was the public defenders, there was the defense, there was law enforcement, not only northern Nevada, but southern Nevada. And we, again, Sheriff, you alluded to it perfectly. Everybody understands that this is a major, major problem. And everybody understands that we need to do the best that we can to get all the resources, all the stakeholders, and let's agree on something. And ultimately, what we agreed on is that the bill extends the arrest window time to 7 days. In many domestic violence situations, the suspects can and do try to hide for the 24-hour window, and after it's up, they return to the scene. That's the way that it was before. But now with Assembly Bill 51, if we arrive on the scene, we establish probable cause, not only do we not still have that 24 hours, now it's extended up to 7 days. And what that does is that offers that victim, and again, it's victim assistance. The victim that's out there, call us, give us some resources. We have victim advocates. We can provide, additional shelter or other resources to prevent this from happening again. So, I mean, with Assembly Bill 51 getting signed in, we think it'll be much harder to hide for those 7 days. We're hopeful this will be a real tool for us to combat and assist those domestic violence survivors.
I agree. And, again, when we were out on patrol, those are, I think, some of the things we saw, right? Is that 24 hours was hard to get that victim because oftentimes they've been emotionally, physically, mentally abused. And so they are totally isolated and rely upon that suspect. And that 24 hours is hard to get our victim in and victim advocate in and get them out. Now we have at least 7 days, and then 7 days to go find that person. And again, I think this is one I know when we talk to patrol and victim advocates and victims and everybody across the board, it's frustrating because it's just one, it breaks your heart. And again, like we just saw, it led to the old.
Sure.
Which is horrible. Again, I want to thank you guys for everything. I know that we just covered 3, but
We got
there's,
the 4.
we got 4. That's right, we got 4.
good ones.
I think those are some of the major ones that we knew were affecting our community before. There's a whole bunch more. One question real quick, because it kind of fluctuates. I know you don't know the exact dates, but some people think, okay, the bills are signed by the governor, boom, they go into effect. How does that kind of work?
Bills are staggered. Some took effect July 1, some take effect October 1st. Others take effect next year, the year after. It just really is a timeline on how people can get to, it's part of the discussion, I think, when we're looking at bills. Hey, we want to do this, but it's going to take us some time to ramp up software or personnel, and so we work with legislators to fix that stuff.
Awesome. Well, again, I want to thank both of you for everything. Thank you now for the next 1.5 years as you go to the committee meetings, you monitor everything else, and besides doing, for you, Sergeant Walker, your other job now that you have to go back to, and Mary Sarah for everything else you're going to monitor. So again, you guys did a great job. Our office and our community here appreciate your efforts. I know sometimes it's rewarding, and some of these bills that we see, sometimes it may be a little frustrating.
Sure.
And we had those discussions, but thank you for staying down there and looking out for this office, but more importantly, our people and our community.
All right, and thank you for joining us here from the Nevada Room on this episode of Did You Know regarding the 2023 legislature here in the state of Nevada. Be sure to follow us at Washoe Sheriff on all of our social media. Have a great day. Stay cool out there. It's going to be hot. We'll see you next time.